Well, hello there, all you amazing people. You probably have clicked this video in anger or despair, or what is this fool saying now when I'm saying that open source is overrated? So I have to say a lot of things, because you're already, right now, 90% certainty that you are so angry that you have blue balls for the rest of your life. Am I saying open source is not good? No. Am I saying open source don't have its place and value in society? No. But just like anything else in this world, there is no thing, no idea, no belief, etc., that is the best for everything and should be the only one that we use, think about, do, execute, have intercourse with, put in what you want here. People that have the belief that this is going to save this one thing is going to change everything and save everything and it's the best thing ever, are not living in reality, and they are 99% certainty have no idea what they are talking about. Because if you just know a little bit about how development is going on, you will see that open source, or the TNU license, which is most people associating with open source, is nothing more than a philosophy, a methodology, a tool that a developer or developer team can utilize if they deem it to be what they desire. That's all it is. It's a personal opinion on how to do develop. Opinions can never be 100% the best, because they are opinions. One opinion can never be 100% the best. There's always room for improvement, and also always depend on situations. Of course, there are bad opinions, like if you're going to put people into ditches of lava in Minecraft, that's a bad opinion, you know. If you have the opinion that some is more relevant than other people because of external factors, that's of course a bad. But there is no 100% conclusive one opinion rules them all. And that's all open source is, when you think about it. It's like, I'm going to develop something, how am I going to do it? And you can debate morals, ethics, better for the world and society and stuff like that. And I see your point. I have been dealing with open source since I was a teenager. That's many moons ago. It's like we're creeping up on 30 years. Like really creeping up on 30 years that I've been dealing with all of this Linux, open source, and what have you not. And trust me, all of the hype, all of the so-called open source advocate, Free Software Foundation, and Linux YouTubers are telling you that this is going to be the best thing ever. Has never happened in, well, the GPLs from the 80s. It has not saved the world. We still find bugs in complicated open source projects that's been there for decades, just like you do in closed source software. But I want to explain to you that open source is nothing really new. It's just the term open source is new, and the GPL license is actually not even new. It's like as old as I am. But the idea behind developers or other people being able to unrestricted go into the source code and do the little things is really old. So I think a lot of you guys, like if you go in here and look into open source, the term open source stems a little bit from the 1997-ish. Been around before, but it kind of got turned in the Cathedral and the Bazaar a little bit with Eric S. Raymond. But it all, like, as far as I remember 100%, it's like the open source initiative was started in the late 2000s or something. Not late 2000s, late 90s, like 98 or something like that. But that's not really that important, because if you go and look into the MIT license here, that predates open source. I don't think it predates the GNU license, but it do predates open source. And that's in the late 80s, which, yes, it's not the GPL, but it allows people to go in and do whatever they want in the source code. Actually, the MIT license is less restricted than the GPL. The MIT license almost allows you to do whatever you want. Whatever you want. Packages and proprietary, yet do whatever the fuck you want. I say, in my humble opinion, the MIT license and the other license you're looking for into right now are actually more free than the GPL, because they don't restrict you. You can do good things with it, or you can do bad things with it, depending on who you are. You know, there's a reason why Apple used the FreeBSD kernel as its like inspiration, and took the FreeBSD sound stack, driver stack, network stack, and user land, because they could bundle it up and proprietary their code. They didn't do that, but there are, well, let me rephrase. There are a lot of proprietary code in the FreeBSD stack on Mac OS, but there's also some of it that they give back to the community if they're just building upon existing technologies. But if they're making their own, they're taking FreeBSD code, modifying it, and proprietary. If they're just slightly modifying FreeBSD code, they're just giving back to the community. And there's a whole fucking many videos explaining that out there. That's what the MIT and BSD license allow you, that we go into here. That actually stems back, well, it was public domain up to 18 1988. What do you mean by public domain? Public domain is more or less just a non-licensed license. It's the public domain. You can do whatever the fuck you want with it. It's mostly used for music, books, and films and stuff like that, but it's also a term that you use for code that have no license on. You know, I remember a time when open source was not that known yet, like in the early 2000s, and a lot of people say, oh, this is in the public domain. So that basically meant do whatever you want with it. There's no license on it. There was not even a licensed file. And a lot of developers will say, yeah, but it's because it's in the public domain. Then they started to use BSD license, MIT license, DPLs a little bit, because people were then using their code and not credit them, and using their code and fucking shit up, and then trying to get money out of the developers, and yeah, people being stupid people basically, and then blaming the developer, even though that they just downloaded random code from the internet and expected it to like save their fucking marriage or something like that, and the wife went away with the bouncer or something like that. You know, it's like people are just stupid in general. But I hope this was saying that the concept of having the source code open for the public has never been a new thing. It's been existing ever since coding was a thing. Even when they theorized about coding, when we didn't even have machines to code on, they were theorizing about coding. That was also done in a non-licensed way because they were not thinking about licensing it. So open source, or the ability to modify and look at the source code, is actually not that new. Proprietary software is. So if open source has been existing, or well, the capabilities of modifying the code have existed for so fucking many years, why is everyone not doing it? Because it's not the best tool for every job. If we didn't need proprietary software in the world, it would not exist. And you may say, oh, it only exists because someone wants to make money. That's a need. Is it allowed or against the rules in society to make money? I don't know. I've never seen a law or legislation that says that it's against anything to make money. Yeah, it sucks for you if you can't afford it. It sucks for me if I want to modify it or use it for my projects or do stuff with it. Yeah, it sucks, but it's not illegal. It's just not what I like to do, and I wish they would open source it, but they are in their own right to do whatever they want to do with the thing they made, okay? There was a need that open source didn't fulfill, and that was to protect intellectual properties, basically. Which, let's be honest, Linux would not be where it is today without intellectual properties money. 90% of the money flow that goes into open source and Linux is being funded by proprietary software or companies that have patent. I remember a day and a decade almost, I think it was about a decade, where Linux was purely funded by volunteers. It took years before we had driver support for a lot of fucking basic peripherals. It will take months and years before we could do the basic thing that a lot of other systems could do. Why? Because who the fuck wants to code for free? You know, who wants to just sit down and code hours after work, you know, hiding from the wife and family obligations and stuff like, just sit and code, put it out into the ether to help people. Those people are really few and far between. Like, really few and far between. What made Linux into what it is today was big companies. Linux started to become popular on the server market. Companies that did Linux support and made Linux distributions to run on servers started to make money running on servers and stuff like that, so they could hire developers. And a lot of the things that they built was, yes, on open source, but they also ran their own proprietary versions of X, Y, and Z protocols, X, Y, and Z software solutions to make money. Or they locked in a vendor into a service agreement. Just look at the SUSE, Red Hat, Canonical service agreements. Like, if you like open source, that's great, but locking people into like a multi-million fucking dollar contract almost for using open source, I don't know, like, I'd rather fucking just pay a one-time fee for the program, to be honest. But they're basically doing the subscription mode. That's how Linux makes money. They're doing the subscription mode. They're doing the Netflix thing. Subscribe and we give you this for free. Or you can use our stuff, but we will withhold some of the technologies that we build ourselves. But you can still download most of our shit and run it, or at least the distribution. Linux and a lot of open source projects would not be here today if it was not because a lot of massively proprietary companies or intellectual companies were funneling a lot of money into Linux, because they use Linux either as a development platform, server platform to host their applications and stuff like that, and etc, etc, etc. And now I'm saying that using Linux to host their applications, you have to stop thinking about an operating system as a special little thing. unique little thing. All our operating system is a translation layer between applications and the hardware. That's how we should look at it. Today, in the last 20 years, an operating system has been nothing more than an app store. It's just an app store that you install locally and you run your games, applications, and you develop on. That's all you do. But if you think about it, what is the primary thing an operating system does for a person other than interacting with it? It's serving them applications, serving them games, serving them entertainment, serving them work platforms. It's a service. It serves you. Okay? So why, now I've been ranting a little bit about that. So why is open source overrated? Like I said, there have been so many studies. I have videos about that here where I have links to white papers from people that have been in the industry for fucking, like, one of them, like, the combined expertise in the IT and development world was like over 100 years or something like that, or close to it. All studies, even studies done by fucking open source themselves, a lot of them, unless they are massively biased, but 9 out of 10 studies, the conclusion is there is no concrete evidence that open source is more stable, secure, or better than proprietary. Just like there is no concrete evidence that proprietary software is more stable and secure. However, there is a direct correlation between the quality, security, and stability of the software and how good the developers are. That's it. The only correlations between how secure, how stable, how good your software run is how good the development team is. And it don't matter if it's proprietary, open source, MIT, public domain, whatever the fuck it is. I've seen so many shitty software projects that's proprietary and so many shitty software projects that's open source. I see bugs and security flaws in proprietary software that's been there for decades, the same as I see that with open source. And I know a lot of the Linux copium people here saying, oh, well, there's small flaws with, Adobe and Microsoft suites and stuff like that there is with Linux and open source software. Yeah, but you can't do that. What you have to do is, okay, how many flaws is there per thousands of users? That would be a more accurate prediction of how good or bad it is, because there are probably 100 or 1,000-fold more users using the other systems, the proprietary software, the Windows and stuff like that, than there is Linux and the open source equivalent. So yeah, of course, people are going to use them in so many more different ways that would potentially, find a flaw, find a security issue, find bug, it will show how bad it's done and stuff like that. Just like with Linux, like if more people using Linux and open source, it would have more bug reports, it would have more security risk, it would be attacked more. All that tells you when you go on to see how many bugs there is on Windows versus Linux, it just tells you how popular the system is. The more users there is, the more bad people that are trying to do bad things, and the more people trying to find problems with it to fix. So yeah, they are going to find more because they are focusing more on it. It's so common sense that it don't even it don't make sense to not think it like that. Another thing is that, bugs and all of these things have been fixed better and faster with open source because everyone can see the source code, so therefore if there's an issue, someone will fix it right away. It's the same with fucking proprietary software. The only difference here is with proprietary software is that you don't have to wait for some random fucking dude or do that to get off work and have time to fix your problem, because if there's a problem with a proprietary software or a paid software, there's 9 out of 10 times there's someone just sitting and waiting to get that job so they can fix it, because they have put time and money aside for it. It's called maintenance. ProPups goes into maintenance mode. I know open source do that also, but here you are guaranteed that there will be someone to fix it. I see a lot of people like, yeah, you found a bug and a security risk in Linux, but it got fixed right away. Yeah, it's the same in Windows and a lot of other places, depending on how elaborate the problem is. It gets fixed right away, and then they push it via the internet to the consumers right away. And here's another thing. They say this, everyone can look at the source code, so therefore it's better because people will. No, I've talked to thousands of Linux and open source users, like hundreds of open source developers. And when I talk to the user part of them, I think I will not be out of the realm of possibilities if I said that only 1 to 5% of all of those people have ever looked at a source code. And they all are championing open source. The only people that 9 out of 10 times are looking at source code, proprietary or open source, are the people that are directly involved in the development of it. That is just the truth of it. Could you randomly get someone to look at it? Yeah. Will someone randomly look at it if it's open source? Yeah. But I can here, perfect example. I've been dealing with this professionally. When someone else do their code for you, it's just not, you can't just look at the code and understand what's going on because you don't understand the thought pattern, the logic, why they're naming it this and why they're putting it in there. Here's a thing that I think will put into perspective of you with this here. If you give a source code to someone that have not made it, it takes almost as long for them to be familiar with the source code as the team that built it did if they're not talking together. So let's say you have a team in let's say Africa that built, I don't know, like a massive project. Then a company takes that project and dump it into their development department and kick off those pesky African superstars just out. And then the team look at it, depending on how good that African team is. It can take longer or as long and maybe a little bit shorter to actually read the source code, understand the source code, and understand it enough that you can now go in and fix bugs, maintain it, add to it, etc, etc, etc. That's how software has been done for decades, both open source and closed source. And that's why communication is a massive fucking issue when you're sharing projects between each other or you're outsourcing development. Because when you're outsourcing development, you're really depending on how good that team is that you outsource to at explaining, commenting, documenting how they're doing shit, and then you have to understand that. So yeah, I can look at the Linux source code, and I've done this on streams. I put up part of the Linux source code, and then random people came into the stream, developers and non-developers, and was like, oh, Linux, blah, blah, that's cool. What does this mean I have on the screen? Oh, it's a function, or it's a method, or it's a class. Yeah, you just need to understand like an hour of coding to know what that is, but what does it do? I have never met anyone that could explain to me exactly what it did. They could not look at a screen like this here with like 200, 300, 400 lines of code and tell me exactly what it did. They could have an idea and they were in the right ballpark. Sometimes it would be part of the file system. Sometimes it would be part of the driver stack, or it would be part of how it's handling what the fuck was the other one I did? I think it was like interrupts or something, memory management. I can't fucking remember it. So they have like an idea, but having an idea don't mean you can fix it. But that's not what the open source world and the Linux world is telling you. They're telling you that because you can see the source code, you can also fix it. You can if you're fucking Einstein, okay? I think I've brought in my point right now. I'm going to tell you a little bit about why, again, I don't hate open source. I think it's a great tool. Where is it a great tool? I think personally that open source or MIT, or when I say open source, think about being able to see the source code. That is great and should be mandatory in any educational institute in the world. Because if let's say MIT or Boston Dynamic or something like that, that is a public research learning institute, are building something, the main priority for those organizations should be to teach. And you can learn a lot from looking at open source code. That's how I learn to code. I learn by looking at other people's code. You can do that if it's small program. But I still believe that anything that's being done in schools and universities, if it has anything to do with coding, it should all be open source or public domain. I don't give a fuck what license they choose. It should just be so other people that are interested in learning to code can use that as an example. The other thing that I like about open source, and listen really close to what I'm saying here, is the possibility that you can get help from outside people. It's not a guarantee, it's a possibility. I see too many people that say, oh, I open source this program because then people will help me. No, you can't expect that. They may help you. There's a high chance if it's a good product, if it's a good program and it's being promoted a lot, but it's not a guarantee. I've seen so many open source projects that started out really small, they become really big. The maintainers can't maintain them anymore because it's taking time away from family and work. And they're like, if I have to continue this here, I need to get paid. And then they try to do the donations thing, and almost nobody donate to them. Then they're like, I have to put it behind a paywall, or else I can't justify it. Then people fork it, and it becomes shitty and shittier for each fork. That's how I have seen 99% of open source projects gone. And I know you say, what about GNOME? GNOME is sponsored by massive companies that makes a lot of money with intellectual properties and proprietary code. The same with the Linux kernel. The same with KDE. I could go on and on and on. GIMP, Word not work perfect, OpenOffice, blah, blah, blah. I could go on and on and on. We cannot have open source and Linux the way we have it today without intellectual properties paying for it. It's just not possible. Because how, again, I have asked this a lot of times, which again, this is also added bonus. You could get people to donate to you. If they don't want to help with coding, they don't know that, there is a possibility that they will just give you some money for good work. And people do that. Like, I'm not saying they're not doing that. They are doing that. But too few people are giving too little. for it to be sustainable. What is this like famous, was it Nixon or some American president that talked about communism, say that at one point you'll run out of other people's money. At one point you will run out of other people's money and other people's time in open source. People just don't have enough time for it. And again, I've seen more projects than not close because the main developers just didn't have time anymore. They changed jobs, they changed priorities, they got a job that expected more of them, etc, etc, etc. And yeah, people will fork it, as you will probably say right now, Kent, you stupid idiot, we can just fork it. The forks 9 out of 10 times only last like a few years, if even that, and they are being run really, really bad, and they are not as good. The fork of GIMP, because they didn't like the name of the fuck it was, is that even around anymore? The forks of Star Office, there's only Open Office left. You know, there are forks of KDE from KDE 3 point whatever it is called Trinity and stuff that, yeah, it's out there, but it's not near as fucking good and as big as KDE is today. And these are just like the ones I can remember on top of my head that's actually really big projects. There are a lot of benefits for open source, and it should be used, but it's not the silver bullet to all that's wrong in the coding world. There is a reason why the development world works the way it does today. It's because it's been tested, tried, modified for decades, and it's really hard to change a system that's been running like that and to find alternative that's as good, because there is a reason why people are doing it the way they're doing it today. It's because it fucking works. Yeah, it's sucky for you and me that want to learn to code that we can't see the source code, or it's sucky for you and me that just want shit for free, because a lot of open source are free. That's why 90% of people like open source. They don't have to pay for anything. And I don't give a fuck what you're saying. That's the case of it. That's the honest truth of it. Because again, the second you have to pay for a previous open source or free software tool, you're going to something else. I've seen it so many times, thousands of times, where when someone wants more, look at fucking Elementary OS. They had like, hey, please sponsor us with just like $1 fucking, and people were mental until they realized they could just put a 0 and click next. That alone was such a big of a fucking issue that people had to pay $1 for a crate distribution. Imagine everyone that downloaded Elementary was paid $1. Imagine the resources that company or that organization so we would have to hire permanent developers, to develop faster, to pay for more testers so you got a better product. Nothing in this world is free. A lot of open source people, they say, oh, it's not like free isn't free and money is free isn't free beer. If something is free, someone else is paying for it. If you don't pay for it with your own money, someone else is paying for you to use it. You're like I say to a lot of open source lovers and Linux lovers, you're basically leeching us a lot of great, amazing people's work, and you're not giving anything back at all. Nothing. That's not sustainable. And that's why open source is overrated. Because if everything were run with the TNU Free Software Foundation's philosophies of how to do open source or free software, that's not sustainable, because there will be more people that will use and not give back because they can. It's just human psychology. See you all later. Bye bye.